A car dealership sells you the single most expensive thing most people will ever buy with cash they don't have, negotiates with you for hours over a few $100s, and then, on the actual car itself, keeps almost nothing. The average new vehicle in America generates somewhere around $3,000 of gross profit for the store that sold it. On a $40,000 or $50,000 purchase, strip out the overhead, the salesperson's cut, the lot rent, the lights, and a dealership's net profit margin on new cars sits at somewhere between 1% and 3%. A grocery store makes more on a box of cereal. On paper, this is not a business. It is a very expensive, very stressful way to lose money slowly. And yet, there are almost 17,000 franchise dealerships in the USA. Hay moved over $1.3 trillion of vehicles last year, and plenty of the people who own them are the richest person in their town. Something does not add up, and the gap between those two facts is where this video lives. Because a dealership is not really in the business of selling you a car. The car is what gets you through the door. By the end of this, you'll know what they're actually selling, where the real money hides, and why the sales floor is the least profitable room in the entire building. Quick thing before we dive in, if you want more of these, subscribing is what makes that happen. Costs nothing. Takes 2 seconds. All right, let's get into it. Start with the moment everyone dreads, and everyone thinks they've already survived. You've picked the car. You've gone back and forth on the price. You feel like you won, or at least like you didn't lose too badly. And right when you think the hard part is over, you get handed off to a different person in a small office at the back of the building, sometimes with a window, sometimes without one. This is the part of the building that does not appear in the brochure. Inside the industry, it has a nickname, the box. And the box is where the real business happens. Everything before it, the haggling, the trade-in appraisal, the walk around the lot, was the warm-up act. Here's the thing worth holding on to, because it explains almost everything that follows. The entire negotiation up to this point was never really about the price of the car. It was about the payment. The moment a salesperson asks what monthly payment you're comfortable with instead of what price you're willing to pay, the whole transaction changes shape. A price is one number you can compare against another dealership down the road. A payment is 4 numbers stacked on top of each other: the vehicle price, the trade-in value, the interest rate, and the loan term, and you are only ever shown the total. Move any one of those 4 numbers and the payment barely changes, but the dealership's profit on the deal can shift by thousands. You can win the argument over the sticker price and still hand back everything you won and more in the other 3 numbers, and you will never see it happen, because you were only ever looking at the one number they gave you to look at. That's the payment trick, and it's old, and plenty of buyers now know to watch for it. So the money has quietly moved somewhere most people never think to check at all. Sit in the box for a minute and watch what actually gets sold there. An extended warranty. Gap insurance, which covers the difference if the car gets totaled for less than you still owe. Paint and fabric protection. Tire and wheel coverage. A maintenance plan. None of these things exist yet when you sign for them. They are contracts, mostly written by a third party, and the dealership's cost to hand you one is close to nothing. Across publicly traded dealer groups, the finance and insurance office was generating an average of roughly $2,500 of gross profit per vehicle by the second half of 2025. Read that next to the number from the start of this video. The new car itself, the thing you spent 3 hours negotiating over, nets the store somewhere around $3,000. The paperwork you signed in 15 minutes at the end, half asleep, ready to go home, nets almost exactly the same amount. One of those took a factory, a shipping network, and a showroom. The other took a laptop and a signature. And there's a reason that office always comes last. You've already agreed to buy. The big decision is behind you. Decision fatigue has set in, and a stream of small yeses, about $100 a month here, another $40 there, barely registers as a decision at all. Nobody haggles over gap insurance the way they haggled over the sticker price, because by the time it's offered, the fight already feels over. Now, a question for the comments, because I want to know how deep this goes. What's the single most useless thing you got talked into buying in that little office? And how much did it cost you? I've heard everything from nitrogen-filled tires to a $500 fabric protectant spray you could buy at a hardware store for $12. Put it below. Genuinely curious how far this goes. And if pulling businesses apart like this is your thing, a like and a subscribe helps this channel more than you'd think. Right, back to the money, because the box is only the second layer. Go back further, to before you ever walked in, and there's a number sitting on every new car on that lot that the manufacturer never wants you to see, and the dealer legally does not have to show you. It's called holdback. Depending on the brand, the manufacturer pays the dealer back somewhere between 1 and 3% of the vehicle's MSRP, sometimes the invoice price, once the car is sold. GM, Ford, and Stellantis pay their dealers 3% of the sticker price back as holdback. Toyota and Honda pay 2%. A handful of luxury brands, BMW, Audi, Porsche, pay none at all. That figure never appears on the invoice you get shown, the one everyone treats as the sacred, honest number. The dealer's real cost. It isn't. The invoice price already has a cushion baked into it that flows back to the dealer regardless of how hard you negotiated, which means the dealer can technically sell you a car at invoice, look you dead in the eye and say they made nothing on it, and still walk away with a check from the manufacturer for over $1,000 once the paperwork clears. Then there's the car you traded in, and this is where the arithmetic gets genuinely uncomfortable, because it runs almost exactly like a pawn shop. The dealer isn't appraising your trade-in to be fair to you. They're appraising it to buy it below what it's worth, the same way a pawnbroker lends you less than an item would resell for, because the spread between what they pay you and what they can get for it later is the entire point. That car gets reconditioned for a few $100s, put back on the lot, and sold as used at a margin that, department for department, actually beats new cars. Used vehicles make up roughly a third of a typical dealership's total sales and deliver a disproportionate share of its profit, because unlike a new Camry that's identical to the one at every other Toyota store in the state, a 5-year-old Camry with 40,000 miles on it has no direct price comparison, sitting right down the road. Nobody can look up the exact invoice cost the way they can with new cars. The dealer sets the price, and the shopper has almost nothing to argue against it with. And then there's the fee that isn't really a fee at all. It's a straight profit line dressed up as paperwork. The documentation fee. It exists, nominally, to cover the cost of processing your title and registration. In California, it's capped by law at $85. In Florida, dealers routinely charge close to $1,000 for the exact same stack of paperwork. Same job, same forms, 600% apart, purely because one state regulates it and the other shrugs. Multiply a few $100s of pure margin across every single car a dealership moves in a year, and you've built an entire profit center out of a folder of paper that costs about $4 to produce. So here's where the story could turn simple. Dealer bad, buyer robbed, and normally this is the point where a video like this hands you a villain. But it's worth pausing here, because a dealership genuinely can't survive on tricks and fees alone, no matter how good the box is. And the honest reason why is the part almost nobody talks about. The real dependable engine underneath the entire business isn't the sale at all. It's what happens after you drive off. Service and parts departments generate, on average, close to half of a dealership's total gross profit, using barely more than 1/10 of its total revenue. Read that split again. Half the profit, from about 1/10 of the money coming through the door. New car sales, all that negotiating, all that stress, account for roughly 30% of a dealership's gross profit. Service, quietly, in the back. Oil changes and brake jobs and warranty repairs billed at a shop rate the customer rarely questions, generates almost as much on its own as new and used sales combined. And that's the part that actually explains why the car is sold the way it is. A dealership doesn't need to win everything on the day you buy, because the day you buy is just the beginning of a relationship it's going to bill you for every 12 months for as long as you own the thing. The car isn't the product. The car is what gets you to come back. Now, the fairness pivot. Because this industry has been dragged in front of federal regulators for exactly the kind of markup described earlier, and it's worth knowing how far it went. For years, when a dealership arranged your financing, it wasn't just passing along the rate the bank quoted. It was allowed to mark that rate up and quietly keep the difference, and dealers had wide discretion over who got marked up and by how much. In December 2013, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Department of Justice found that Ally Financial's dealer markup system had resulted in more than 235,000 Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Pacific Islander borrowers paying higher interest rates than white borrowers with the same credit, for no reason connected to risk at all. Ally was ordered to pay $80 million back to those borrowers and an $18 million penalty, the largest auto loan discrimination settlement in the country's history at the time. 18 months later, Honda's finance arm settled a nearly identical case, $24 million in restitution, and agreed to cut the maximum markup dealers were allowed to add from as high as 2.25% down to 1%. That's not a fee structure nobody noticed. That's a federal finding that the payment trick, applied at scale, had a discriminatory cost, and it landed on real people. And the industry survives on more than psychology, too. It survives on law. In nearly every American state, it is illegal for a car manufacturer to sell directly to you. At least 17 states have laws explicitly banning it. When Tesla tried to skip the dealer model entirely and sell straight from its own stores, it got blocked outright from doing so in Texas, New Jersey, Arizona, and Maryland, and shut out of Louisiana completely, forced instead into galleries where staff are legally barred from discussing price or letting you test drive the car. Those franchise laws were written decades ago, ostensibly to protect small local dealers from being squeezed out by the manufacturers whose cars they sell. Whatever the original intent, the effect today is that the entire structure this video just walked through, the box, the holdback, the trade-in spread, the service bay, isn't just something dealers invented. It's something state law makes almost mandatory, because in most of the country, a dealership is the only legal way to buy a new car at all. Which makes the counterexample worth a look, because it did exist. Carvana built its entire pitch around skipping all of it. No negotiation, no box, no haggling over a payment. Buy the car online and it shows up in a vending machine. And for a while it looked like proof that the traditional model was pure friction. Then reality caught up with it anyway. Carvana had funded its growth with enormous debt, used car prices swung hard against it, and by December 2022 its stock, which had traded above $370 a year earlier, was worth less than $5. The company was carrying over $5.5 billion in unsecured debt and openly flirting with bankruptcy. It survived only by cutting a deal with its creditors in mid-2023 that wiped out over $1 billion of that debt and slashed a further $1 billion in annual costs. It did recover, spectacularly, but the lesson sitting underneath that near collapse is the same one this whole video has been circling. Selling cars at a thin, honest margin, with none of the box, none of the holdback, none of the service bay income, is genuinely one of the hardest ways to run a profitable business in America. The traditional dealership isn't padded with all those extra layers because it's greedy for the sake of it. It's padded with them because the car alone doesn't come close to paying the bills. So that's the machine. A showroom that loses its shirt on the thing in the window and makes it back 4 different ways once you've agreed to buy. In a back office with your payment instead of your price. In a manufacturer rebate you'll never see the paperwork for. In a trade-in bought low and resold high. In a service bay that will out-earn the entire sales floor before your first oil change is due. A dealership is not really a car store. It's a bank, an insurance broker, and a repair shop, wearing a car lot as a disguise, and the car parked out front under the lights is just the thing that gets you to walk in and start the relationship. You didn't buy a car that day. You signed up for one, and the payments never really stopped. They just changed what they were for. If this one surprised you, a like and a subscribe genuinely helps more than you'd think. And if you want to see the other side of this exact industry, go watch our video on how car mechanics make money. It pairs perfectly with this one. Or dig into the full Money in Business playlist on the channel. See you in the next one.